The trick is you can't use any of those because as a person with brain injury, I had to relearn every association. Not only did I know what an apple was, I didn't know what the color red was. I didn't know how anything tasted. I had to relearn all those associations for myself. I had to start from the very beginning, and I had to teach myself, with much help of course, I had to figure out new words and associations from my personal lexicon. That's interesting because everyone assimilates that lexicon growing up. So think about that, the challenges that I had trying to relearn everything you can imagine and how to learn it. The reason why part of why that's important to me, I'm a big part of what's called the Body Love movement. I go and I speak all around the country. I speak at universities and hospitals, clinics, and bookstores. I do a lot of book signings. But one of the things I'm recently involved in is the Body Love movement. And it's a movement that's for women and men of all sizes, shapes, and ability levels to learn to love themselves no matter what your abilities, no matter what your challenges are. And as a person in the Body Love movement, we have to create our own associations, just like I did with my brain injury. You have to relearn how to teach yourself words of caring rather than shaming, and take the shame out of it. And I know that you guys all know how apples taste and how to use them. I would guess that in any given room, half the people in the room can make a really killer apple pie, right? Raise your hand if you can make good apple pie. I love to eat apple pie. But so the rest of you guys who can't can learn it. That's one of the amazing things about my personal journey and about learning these associations is that we can share and learn from each other and relearn it together. I'm going to talk about my Self-Advocacy Toolbox, which is my new workbook that was just released that goes with all of my talks. But first I'd kind of like to tell you a little bit about me and my story and how I got my brain injury. I'm actually from here, if you can believe it. I'm from Crow, which is about 5 miles down the road that way. Yes, go Crow! Woo!
Yeah!
Thanks. Cougars
Crow!
fan.
Yeah, you know it.
I was with two groups of kids. I was 15. We were going to a football game, which is very common. You know, it's kind of like Friday Night Lights around here. If you grow up around here, it's all about football. So we were going to a football game, and there was 2 cars of us. And unbeknownst to us, the drivers of the cars decided to race. There is a road around here that's actually not too far from the entrance to the Oregon Country Fair, down 126. It's called Cantrell Road. Part of it is paved, and the other part is gravel road. So the driver of my car, who was somebody who I didn't really know, there was 5 of us in the car, she was speeding. Since I don't have any memories since before my car accident, I don't really know anything except for what everyone told me. So I've been told we went around 70 down this gravel road. We spun 6 times and hit a fence post at the end of Cantrell Road, and I happened to have the misfortune to be underneath the fence post in the middle of the back seat. I was the most injured. There was a boy who was in the front seat who was actually, he was cut and bleeding, and he had to climb out of the window, run across the field on 126. If you can imagine, you guys all who drove here, run across one of those big fields and try bleeding at like 2 in the morning to try and get help. So it's a lot like a movie, really. One of the funny coincidences that kind of makes the hair go up on the back of my neck is the fact that he was the son of the assistant fire chief in my town. So everyone in my car actually had known all the people who came to our rescue since we were about 4 years old, which is kind of a funny coincidence. Unfortunate for those men, but they did a wonderful, wonderful job of taking care of us. So we get to the hospital, and my parents get that proverbial 3 a.m. phone call. Now, I don't know what kind of a person I was before the accident, so I don't know if they were expecting that kind of phone call. I hope not. So I'm in the hospital, and my parents are actually in the chapel and have been told that I am dying, and I'm about to die. So they weren't particularly religious either, so it's kind of funny that they were there. But they get somebody coming into the chapel saying, hey, we can't give your daughter the medicine we need to bring down the swelling in her brain. She's got a traumatic brain injury, but she's allergic to steroids. So if we give her the steroids, either going to be blind or we're going to kill her. So we can't give her that. We don't know what to do. And then right at that moment, which is another one of these weird woo-woo, although I'm sure you guys are okay with woo-woo, it's kind of where we're at. Woo-woo moments. I talk about this, like I say, all over the country, and people kind of look at me like, okay, hippie, knock it off. But one of the funny thing ones, so like right after that, into the chapel comes this other nurse, and she's like, wait, there's this man in the ER. He just came from this brain injury conference, and he has a medicine in his briefcase that can save your daughter. So my parents didn't have much choice. I've never really actually talked to them about that moment. Probably don't want to go there. They said yes, and I'm alive today. The really crazy part is that there's no record of that man or that medicine anywhere. I have not found it. I have looked. All of the records from that time have been destroyed, and no one who was involved has any idea of what happened. But it happened, and I'm here. So it's pretty amazing, and I'm very grateful.
Woo! We're glad you're here too.
Well,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the things that that brings up is my first tool. I'm going to bring up my board here a second. Here we go. Here's all my tools in my toolbox. The first of them is support. I had a lot of different kinds of support, clearly. I had my family and my friends. My family who stood by me, my friends who stood by me, even though I didn't know who they were. For the longest time, I called my dad by the name of my dog. When you have a brain injury, things, wires get recrossed when they get rerouted. It's fascinating to me, of course, but it's interesting. I had incredible amounts of support. I had, I had doctors, nurses, therapists, family, friends, teachers, support groups, pretty much, run the gamut. The unfortunate thing is that there were a lot of things I could have taken advantage of that I didn't. There were peer support groups of people with disabilities. There were teen support groups that I could have taken advantage of, and I didn't. Unfortunately, that's something that I find a lot when I speak all around the country, is that there are people with many different kinds of challenges, not necessarily big dramatic disabilities like me, but things like AA. There's so many people who won't go for fear of repercussion from their social network. Much the same way that I wouldn't go to the disability support group because I thought people would think, oh my God, she's disabled, when clearly I was. It's a really important thing that I use now in my career. I have a big mentorship group. I speak with a lot of other speakers that are involved with a lot of other causes, and we really support each other and encourage each other. And I have friends that are artists and speakers as well. And I find that when I speak to them, the support of their peer groups means so much. And often we don't, as adults, take advantage of all the things that is offered to us. And I really encourage everyone in my workshops to make a list of the things that can support them that maybe they didn't think about in their lives. Things like professional mentorship programs, things like goals that you want to make, and people who can help make it happen for you. It's really about getting out of your own way and finding what you need and asking for it. One of the things that happened after I got out of the hospital, it was a very long, comparatively, recovery process. But I was mostly recovered. And I went home, and one of the things that they do in these cases, you have insurance agents that come to your house, and they make a list of the things that are wrong with you. Based on this list, you get a certain amount of money, which is supposed to support you, at any disability claim. It was really eerie, because here I am, 15 years old, and my brain is kind of mushy, it's kind of back, but not really back. And I'm sitting in the living room, my parents are in the kitchen, excuse me, with the insurance agent going through this list. And think about it, if you had to sit there and listen to a list of things that you'd never be able to do while I go through this list. It was pretty intense, which is why it's so clear to me. Will she be able to marry? Nope. Can she have children? No. Will she go to school? No. Can she have a career? No. Is she going to be able to read? I don't think so. Is she going to drive? No. Anything you could think. I was told indirectly that I would never be able to do. And even though I wasn't really supposed to hear that conversation, it was something that kind of lit a fire under me. And I've discovered later is a lot of motivation for what I do. Maybe it's the wrong way, but I really want to prove to everyone, and I did before, that I can do things. And I think that really believing that you can do it in the face of complete disbelief that you can is something that more people can take advantage of and more people can use in their own lives. What do you think you can't do? And why do you think you can't do it? The only person who's telling you no is you. Those external things you have to just ignore. When I speak to people, I get a lot of stories from people who say that I can't achieve and I can't succeed because of X or Y. And I'm certainly not the most disabled person out there. I'm certainly not the person with the most challenges. But I think if you really take the time to think about what you want and how to get there, there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah, very good. Right.
I want to go to my next step here, if I can make my flip chart work. One of the things that I use a lot and that I speak about is adaptive tools. One of the things that I used with my therapist was a memory book, and this was 1992 when I was injured, so it was very low tech back then. I had an actual notebook, if you can imagine that, like a 3-ring notebook. I carried it around. It was crazy. And I had to write down all these things that I had to remember, stuff like phone numbers, because, well, firstly, numbers, because I didn't know what numbers were. So, numbers, the name of my family and friends and their relationship to me, things like that. Now, everyone uses their phone for that, right? We've all got our phones. But that's another thing that I hear when I go and speak, is that most people don't take advantage of all of the things that they have at their disposal. Use a calendar. It's not crazy, it's not rocket science, but it makes your life easier. Make your world fit you rather than make you fit your world. I use things like my planner, my phone apps. I have things like physical tools that I use. Because of my genetic disability, often I can't walk. So I have a cane wardrobe, for instance. I have my fancy cane for, the black tie occasions. I have my walking stick, stuff like that. I've had to use some really unfortunate things. I have a toilet seat, like a race that's horrible. Things like that. Nobody wants to think about that, but those are the kinds of things that you really have to force yourself to use if you want your life to be easier. One of the things that I use quite a lot is my bike. I count that as an adaptive tool. Since I can't drive, I ride a bike. I have a 3-wheeled bike because my balance is bad, and I have a trailer so I can take stuff to the market. It's not rocket science, but it makes my life work for me. I live in a small town. I live in Veneta, so that I can walk everywhere I want to go. I don't try and set myself up for failure. I try and set myself up for success with the things around me and the things that I do. The important thing is to not let my alterability define my choices. My husband actually is in the process of buying me a motor for my 3-wheeled bike. I'm pretty excited about that. Then I can use it in the rain and anytime I want. Kind of excited. That's one of the important things of my third tool, which is proactive declaratory language. But before I get there, I forgot about this piece. Think about the adaptive tools you use. They don't have to be anything dramatic like mine. You use crutches. You use a GPS app. If everyone has that on their phone. That's an adaptive tool you can use. Think of what you can add to your life that would make it run more smoothly and actually use it. So the third tool is the proactive declaratory language. Adapt your world to fit you rather than make yourself fit the world. With the declaratory language, you're saying, I need what works for me. You're using your I skills, your I language, like I feel like I'm trapped if I can't leave my house, so I have my bike. I feel like I'm trapped, and so I get a bus pass. Use your proactive statements to ask for what you need, and that can help you get to where you want to go. One of the things I do to make myself feel really good, when I do have those occasions when I feel like there's things that I can't have or I can't do because of my situation, I make something really fun. It's called my fun list. I know it sounds silly, but I'm very visual. That was one of the ways I relearned everything. I had to read because I couldn't assimilate things quickly enough. once I learned how to read, I read all the time. I read everything that I could so that I could mimic the cadence of speech, so that I could mimic the way that people thought. So now, as a person who's recovered, I make lists of things. It makes me feel so good, and this is such a nerdy thing to say, to like check something off a list. And if I do something and I don't put it on the list, I write it back on so I can check it off. I'm sure I'm not the only person that does that. So I do the My Fun list. I have this kind of thing posted at my house for when there's things that I feel like I can't do. I write things that I like to do, things that I like to eat. That's a quick one to make yourself feel good. And what makes me happy. So things that I like to do are write, I play the ukulele, I like to play soccer with my kids. Things I like to eat are Thai iced tea, brownies, Toby's tofu breakfast right down the road. It's awesome. What makes me happy? Bubbles, drawing, music, and books. So if there's ever a time when I feel like I can't accomplish something, or if I'm so sick with my genetic disease that I'm in bed, I can refer to something like this. And I don't have to feel helpless. I don't have to feel like I can't do it, because I already have something set in front of me that can make me feel better and take action steps to get to where I want to go. I use that kind of thing. I use my fun list whenever I feel discouraged. To go back to my personal story, I was able to recover. I was able to go back and graduate from high school. It took a lot of therapy, and a lot of wonderful people helped me. A lot of teachers helped me. Actually, a lot of Fair family happened to be teachers that helped me. It was amazing. I was very lucky. I went to college. I was accepted, and I went to Duke University. I came back. Thank you. It was really fun. I came back and I met my husband, actually, while I was working in a Sam Goody music store. And there was kind of a lull in my medical drama. Then one day we went to a concert, and we hadn't found anything with my genetic disease other than a few random events. When I was 12, I was diagnosed with something called uveitis, which is bleeding inside your eye. So I woke up one day when I was 12, to backtrack, and it looked like I was looking through a scab. They dealt with that with injections in your eye, which sounds really cool, is not really cool. But that really hadn't come back until I was about 25. So when I was 25, I was married, we went to a concert, and my mouth started blowing up. It was all the look of Botox and none of the fun. It was huge. Both of my lips were enormous. We went to the hospital and nobody could figure it out. My forearm started swelling up, and my calf started swelling up. And nobody had any idea what was wrong with me, which was kind of not unusual for me, being at the doctor all the time because of my brain injury and things. But they gave me some steroids. It was a different kind of steroid, but they caused lots of side effects. Eventually it went away. But then it came back, and I would be flat on my back for a week, and I wouldn't be able to move, and I would get lesions from anywhere from the size of a silver dollar to the size of a fist that would be painful, and then my arms would swell, and my legs would swell, and my lips would swell, and I wouldn't be able to move. So I went to all these different doctors, and I got some relief, but nobody would figure out what was wrong with me. One of the things that I did, that I often do when I'm frustrated, like I said, I make those lists. And I also do a lot of, my best friend is an artist, and I go to a lot of art museums for solace, and I do a lot of art projects, even though I don't consider myself an artist. Art is very important in making me feel better. So one of the things that I came up with, that I've been doing also with the support of my friend, is something I call vision boards. It's something that it's like more of a targeted meditation almost. We did a lot of work with the Julia Cameron books and things like that. Like my shirt says, don't hate, meditate. It's more of a moving meditation, really. Your hand is moving across the page. Where do they go? Here it goes. So they're targeted meditative writings. And I have these questions that I use when I'm writing these boards. And when I do workshops inside, I'm able to have ephemera and have people come and use their pieces of ephemera and create their boards themselves. But in this setting, it doesn't work. So I'm going to show you my steps, and then I'll show you a board that I made to illustrate that. The questions that I so often use are, What do I want more or less of in my life? What is in my way of achieving it? How can I change my environment in order to achieve it? That's socially, educationally, physically, and what steps will help make it possible? As I've said, the action steps is what make it easier for me, being able to feel like you have control and take some ownership over the situation. Here is my vision board. The thing I was trying to do, I'm a writer. I've been a writer since 2010. I'm one of the owners of Groundwaters magazine, and I also write for companies all over the country. I've had 14 books published since 2010, but I needed an agent. So that was what my goal was. What do I want more or less of in my life? I wanted an agent. So that was what I did. This isn't the exact board, this is a facsimile of it, but so I like to do collage. I find that it's not my art, I'm not very artsy about it, but it's meaningful for me, and that's what matters, right? I do different pictures that are meaningful as far as the situation goes, and this one is an agent, and he's got a cheesy smile, and he says, "Contract!" And this is a picture of a book in a heart. So, my Jen's vision board, goal, a literary agent. And I write the action steps. Number 1, write and polish book. Sounds really small, takes a really long time, but got that part. Design a marketing plan. Contact the agents, continue the publicity work, use the agent feedback, resubmit according to their feedback, and keep it up. That's something that I do a lot because I like the lists and I like the words. I post it's very woo-woo and feel good, but I put all these positive affirmations around my house. It makes me feel good, and it helps me produce things, and it helps me achieve what I want. The last thing is sign the contract. So the crazy thing is, like I said, I do these about targeted things. Sometimes I'll do them about a feeling or an emotion or an event, something I want answers about. In this case, I did my vision board 3 weeks before I went to a conference. I was going to speak at the University of Arizona. I sent in the thing to the agent, and I went about my way, and I went and I spoke and presented at the conference, and I came back to my hotel room the day after I spoke to an email from the agent saying they wanted my book. It's really powerful. Putting these things on paper is intention in action. Putting your desires out there helps manifest it. And it works. It works for all sorts of people and all sorts of occasions. I speak to people who have told me that they've done that as far as their health goes, and then they take steps to make their health better, and it works for them. It's kind of a Freudian thing. You kind of free associate sometimes, but you make a list of things and places you want to go. It's part of my next step, which is self-care. If I can make the flip chart work. Here we go. For me, self-care was a tough one. After my accident, because I couldn't control anything, I had a hard time controlling the way that I felt about eating and food. My family has always been fairly large, but I never had any eating disorders or problems with that. There's 24% of people in our country have an eating disorder. 15% of those are men. My way of controlling my food was to withhold food. I didn't get to the point of being anorexic, but I would do it sort of as a reminder that, you know what, I can control this, and I don't have to eat. I would do stupid things, like I would not eat and I would feel sick, and it was almost like I was forcing someone else to take care of me rather than taking care of myself and take ownership of that. I would do other dumb things, like I wouldn't wear a sweater if I was cold, and I wouldn't go get one because I could prove it to myself that I didn't have to. And as I started reading more about good self-care, I realized how insane that was. And I realized that I wouldn't treat anyone the way that I treated myself. All of these miraculous events happened to get me back to where I was. How could I dare do that? I wouldn't treat a child like that. So I started thinking about how self-destructive my behaviors, even if they were little tiny behaviors, small ones like not wearing a sweater, or big ones like not giving myself enough to eat. And as I started becoming aware of those things and writing them down, I was better about taking care of myself. And as I took care of myself, it built on each other. And I was able to really start to love myself, and that's part of what brought me so much to the body love movement, is being a part of a body of people, a group of people who are committed to that, who are committed to making us all feel great about who we are, no matter where we're at, no matter what your ability level. I started doing things like I made lists. I started getting my hair cut and on a regular basis. I would do things like making it a game. I would be nicer to myself, and then I would try to keep that up. I often have, when I do workshops, in smaller workshops, I have people make lists on the back of their vision boards. And it's neat for me to see the different ways that people can be good to themselves. The biggest way that I treated myself better was honoring how I felt physically. This whole time, I had been getting these frequent illnesses. They would last for 6 to 10 days, and I would be not able to take care of my children. I would not be able to go outside. I wouldn't be able to lift up my feet. One of the things after my accident was I have a droopy leg. Half of my body was paralyzed, and so when I get tired, if I don't notice that, I can really trip and fall and not take good care of myself. So I started trying to be better to myself about that and really honor how I felt when I was sick. So then I started getting really scared because the illnesses kept coming more and more frequently. So I went to my 6th self-advocacy tool, which is considering alternatives. I went to so many different kinds of doctors and therapists to try and find the answer to what was wrong with me. I went to Reiki, I went to acupuncturists, I went to nutritionists, I went to any kind of doctor you can imagine. Finally, I went to an acupuncturist who took a full medical history of Chinese medicine on me, and he said, "Hey, have you ever considered not eating gluten? Everything points to you being prone to things that are inflammatory, so why don't you not eat the inflammatory things?" And I started that, and it was incredible. Within about a month, 30% of my symptoms decreased. Only because I was willing and open to keep exploring those alternatives. Pain management. I didn't need to take the heavy painkillers they were giving me. I needed to work with other kinds of doctors to find things that worked for me in a less damaging way. I did a lot of research for myself on, the internet is so your friend on that if you're trying to find those kinds of things. And I found that there was a blood test to find out if you're prone to inflammatory conditions and prove it for real. That is called a test for HLA-B27. If you have the antigen, is what it's called, it doesn't prove what you have, but it proves that you're not insane and all these things that are happening to you really are happening to you. And so I went to doctor after doctor that wouldn't do the test. It's something, at least when I had done, that you can only get done at the CDC. So it was really incredibly difficult to get. But when I finally did, surprise, surprise, I had the antigen for HLA-B27. And that actually opened a door for me. It made me able to do more research. I found that there were 2 different places in the country that treated what they thought that I might have. At this point, they thought that I had something called ankylosing spondylitis, where my spine grew together in the back. There was 2 doctors. One was the National Institute of Health, and one was a doctor in San Diego. I love the parade. Yay, parade! So I went to San Diego to try and find the answer. I took my whole family down there and I pinned all my hopes on this because I really thought that she would have the answer and finally I would get some help and some treatment. I fly my family down, we go to Disneyland. I'm like, hey, let's make it a trip. And my family's playing soccer in the parking lot, and the doctor has no idea who I am or why I'm there. I've just dragged my family 1,500 miles to get the same answer I've been getting for the last 20 years. I was so discouraged, and I didn't know what to tell them. And I went out in the parking lot to tell them, and I was so angry. I felt like this is not fair. I felt kind of like a little kid. I wanted to stamp my feet and scream. But instead, I went back, and I was persistent, and I kept calling the NIH. I found that I qualified for a study with them. So I went to the NIH. I flew out there, and the NIH, I don't know if anyone's been there, it's a crazy and amazing place. You have your background checked at the door and at the clinic, which is kind of cool. Lots of armed guards, some dogs, very interesting. I have a team of doctors there, and I went and showed up, and I didn't have too much hope on the outside, but on the inside, I really thought I was going to find the answer. This is going to happen for me. It's going to happen right now. So I go in, and I happen to have some of those lesions I talked about. They wanted to do a biopsy. So it was a little bit more involved than a regular biopsy. It was a punch biopsy where they take a piece of skin about the size and diameter of your pinky from the top to the first knuckle. It wasn't a big deal, just a few stitches. And I'm getting scrubbed down, and I get the injection of whatever to make it not hurt. And it was so embarrassing. I just broke down. I was finally so upset and so discouraged, and this whole time I didn't feel like I could cry or I could be upset about it, because I was grateful that I had survived and I'd come back. I just didn't understand why it kept happening to me. Why it kept coming. And she reassured me and took the biopsy and said, you know, go hang out for a couple hours, we'll call you. So I took the Metro to the National Museum of History, which is my favorite museum in the whole world. And I went to have lunch in the basement, which is my favorite place to go there. It's a great little cafe. And she calls me and she says, hey, we don't know what you have. So go home and really trust. We're gonna find something. Something's gonna happen for you. And I was so discouraged, and I just about gave up. But because I had so many people behind me, I really didn't feel like I could. So many people were supporting me, and my family and my friends, and all the people who had helped me get to where I was. So I went back and I kept on, and I'll be damned, about 6 months later, she called me. She said, hey, guess what? We think we know what you have. You are one of 6 people in the world who have this weird genetic disease. We don't know what it's called, and we might name it after you, but we kind of know what it is, and we think we can help you. So I got to fly back to the NIH again, which was a little bit easier the next time. And I got trained, and they gave me a medicine that's an injectable medicine called Kineret, which is used to treat tumors in lab rats and me. So that's fun. Actually, I shouldn't be too tough about it. My husband gives me the shots. I'm really bad about that sort of thing. You'd think after all this stuff, I had reconstructive surgery, I've had all sorts of things, but I can't give myself a shot. But it's amazing. I'm so grateful. At first, when I had that breakdown in the clinic with the doctor in the NIH, she asked me, she goes, so obviously I wasn't hiding my disappointment very well. She said, so what would it take for you to leave here happy? Which is a dumb question for a doctor to ask you. Like, really, I want to not be here. That's kind of it. But I thought about it, and at first I would have said, I need the answer. I want to know what I have. I want to know why I'm so different, and all this stupid stuff keeps happening to me. But then I realized that what I really wanted was help. And through the things that I've learned, I got it. You know, I got it. I can live my life now. I have to take this shot, which is something millions of people do every day with all kinds of different kinds of disabilities and conditions. And I got the knowledge, and I got the help that I needed because I was persistent. I haven't met all my goals, but I'm taking steps to get there. And I have that ability because I kept being persistent, and I kept believing that it would happen eventually, even if I gave up at some parts. Not all parts, but some parts. So I want to go back to the apple. We all know that the apple symbolizes knowledge. It symbolizes beauty. It can symbolize resilience and growth. But for me, it reminds me of the knowledge that I had to work so hard to recreate, and the possibilities that all my hard work made possible, and all the other people in my life helped make possible for me. I'm going to be doing a book signing at Blue Moon, or is it? No, it's at I'm not sure where they have the books at. Is it at Spoken Word stage? The Spoken Word store, sorry about that. I'm going to be doing a book signing at the Spoken Word store. Oh, they have books right here! Yay! Sorry, not good with visuals, even though I said I learned that way. I'm kind of blind, sorry. And I do my talks all around the country. I talk about self-advocacy. I also have a large section on self-advocacy and all of the works in my workbook, all of the different tools on my website. I would love to speak with you guys online or in person. If anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them. Anyone? Questions? No? Yes?
I came in, halfway through. And, and with all of your disabilities, I'm hearing you say you wrote 14 books in a year, or was it just 12?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote 14 books since 2010.
Right.
Yeah.
You go, girl.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I had a lot to catch up on. I feel like because of my injury, I sort of, I came from behind, so I have to run really fast. Yes.
I'm actually an intensive care unit nurse.
Uh-huh.
And I work in the ICU at Sacred Heart.
Uh-huh.
And I work with traumatic brain injury
Wow.
patients.
Yeah.
And what advice could I give to the patients and the family when they're having the trauma of everything that happens, and there's that overwhelming sense of loss, and just the trauma of it all? How can I inspire hope in these families?
I think part of what really drew me to write my first book, that's called Learning Life Again, was the fact that I felt like I was so alone in that time. And I think that a lot of families, there are a few books, there's several books written by families of traumatic brain injury survivors. There's so much work and so much trauma that the family has to go through. The family has to really learn from the beginning how to parent this and how to be a family to this person who's now a child again, even no matter what age they are. I think really exploring the support groups and the support that is around them would be really helpful. And I think also to check, there's a lot of online support available. There's a lot of Facebook groups, and there's groups available actually through the NIH for traumatic brain injury support. There's a conference too through the Oregon Brain Injury Association that I encourage all families of. I often have spoken at things like shelter care and different organizations for people with brain injuries. And I encourage the families and friends to go to at least part of one of those conferences, because doctors will have a lot of good, and then speakers at those conferences have a lot of good advice on how to help those people, and also how to help themselves. Thanks. Anybody else? Any more questions? Yes.
Your list that you did in the very beginning when you were sitting with the insurance company?
Yes.
How many of those have you checked off?
All of them.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have 3 kids now, which is kind of insane, but I have 3 children, and I'm married, and I've traveled all over the world, and I've written books, and actually one of my books was optioned for a screenplay. It was not a screenplay, it was a Lifetime movie, as a matter of fact, but it didn't quite happen. But it's been pretty fun. I've gotten a lot of success, but it's all due to the people that helped me and a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.